I was working full-time at Sears Roebuck, but I was expected to go to college, so I had to make some attempt at going to college. And, it was important to avoid the draft to be in college. So I was at Boston State College, which eventually became UMass Boston. And when I was a freshman, when I started, James Bond was very popular at the time. I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do. So, I looked through all the majors, Latin American studies. I said, oh, this sounds like a James Bond thing. So I started in Latin American studies. Of course, I took Spanish 3 different times and failed at each time. So being a secret agent in Latin America and not speaking Spanish probably wasn't going to work out. So I went through other majors. I basically went through every single major that they had at Boston State College. I was meteorology. This is all fucking math. I was terrible at that. Geography, that turned out to be all math. I said, well, it was primarily a teaching college, so maybe I'll go into teaching. So, I said, but if you're going to be a secondary school, high school teacher, you have to major in, I didn't know any history. I was terrible in math. Major British writers. I couldn't teach English. I was kind of shit out of luck. The only thing I saw was like, well, maybe I could be a gym teacher. But then I look at that and kinesiology and all, it wasn't just doing push-ups and teaching people how to play volleyball. So I end up in elementary education. I'm with the counselor, and she's going, listen, you've gone through every major we have here. College isn't for you. You're just going to, you got to give it up. You got a job, you're working at Sears, just friggin' work at Sears. I said, yeah, I want to, but I'm going to be drafted, and I'm not going to be working at Sears. So, I got to hang on to this college thing as long as I can. She goes, well, there's elementary education, but that's really just for women. I said, oh, really? Women? And she goes, yeah. I said, are men precluded from being in this? Can I be in this? She goes, yeah, you can, if you want, but, you don't see yourself as an elementary school teacher. I said, no. I'm thinking, no fucking way, but, if it keeps me in this and I'm in class, So I signed up for elementary education, and, it really wasn't, it was really not too bad. It was all women teaching the classes and all girls in the classes. I was like the only guy in this entire elementary education program. So whatever. This wasn't too bad. And, and at the meantime, I'm working at Sears. So I'm working at Sears full time. And this buddy of mine, Jerry, another Irish kid, he and I, we're working 40 or 50 hours a week at Sears. And I'm trying to sneak in these classes over at Boston State, but my heart was really at Sears. But I would say that Jerry and I went out probably 5 nights a week, drinking, trying to pick up people, having fun, partying. Now, of course, when I would go into school the next day, I had convinced a lot of the women teachers who, I was kind of like a mascot or something in these classes. I was the only guy in all these classes, So I had the women used to say, well, you come in here. Yeah, I said, yeah, I have a form of narcolepsy, and I can't sleep at night. I have insomnia and all of that. So that's why I'm in here, and I'm sleeping most days. So rather than being yelled at for sleeping in class, I got sympathy for being in class. Poor guy has narcolepsy, insomnia, whatever. So that kind of worked all right. Now, back to my story at Sears with Jerry. Jerry and I are out one night, and, I'm saying, I'm not gonna make it in college, you know. I mean, you know, if I got one more semester, if I pull one more semester out of my ass, I'm gonna be lucky. And you know, Jerry had never gone to college, so he was just waiting for his fucking number to come up. And you know, I mean, he was gonna be screwed. I mean, the only thing that he and I could think of was joining the reserves. But you know, this was in, you know, 66, 60. It was impossible, absolutely impossible to get into the reserves. So, you know, I mean, he and I had this dream of the reserve, you know, I mean, you know, but this wasn't going to happen. So, like one night, like a month later, he and I are out, we're having a few beers, and, you know, Jerry says, you know, I think we might have an in the reserves. I said, what do you mean you might? He said, listen, my sister's husband's father is an administrator, I don't know, a fucking sergeant or whatever they call him, in this reserve unit at the Boston Army base. And it, you know, this reserve unit. So, I mean, I get all excited. I said, yeah, fucking you and I got to go over there and fucking talk to this guy and see what's up. So he goes, all right, you know, I mean, I'll talk to my sister and see if I can set, you know. So she sets this thing up for Jerry and I to meet Sergeant Peltz at the fucking Boston Army base. So Jerry and I go over there, go in. I mean, the Boston Army base is fucking huge. And I guess on weekends there's all kinds of activity with the reserve units and everything. But during the week, it's a fucking ghost town. There's fucking nobody there. So we're like looking all over for, where's this fucking Peltz? So we finally find him. He's got this office, and the fucking office is like a complete fucking shambles. I mean, you know, everything is all over the place. His desk is all a fucking mess. So, you know, we introduce ourselves. I am Bill Fitzpatrick, you know, Jerry Morrissey here. Okay, Jerry, hey, how you doing, Jerry? Oh, yeah, you know, your sister's a great plug thing for my son, you know, blah, 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 all this bullshit. So it becomes very apparent to Jerry and I, we're looking at each other's fucking Peltz. I mean, he reeked of booze. So, I mean, you know, I said, well, you know, maybe this is our in or something. So we're talking to Peltz, and, you know, and he goes, well, there's really no openings. I wish I could give you two guys some glimmer of hope, but there's really nothing. He said, my unit here, I had to cap the waiting list at 300. I got 300 names on the list. I take 1 or 2 names a month off of the list, and these people get in. Everybody else, everybody else is waiting. So Jerry says, well, we want to be on the fucking list anyway. So Peltz goes, I cut the list off at 300, so Jerry says, the fucking difference, make us 301 and 302. So Peltz gives us the forms, and we fill them out, and he says, I really wish I could help you guys, but there's really nothing that I can do. I said, so we're going, well, all right. So Jerry and I leave, and we're going, this guy's a fucking tosspot. Tosspot is an Irish term for a drunk. So Jerry and I, we say, we got to turn this to our fucking advantage, okay? The fact that fucking Peltz, who's in charge of this fucking thing, he looks like he's totally fucking disorganized, and, maybe there's an opening or something here. I mean, maybe. Let's fucking think about this. So, part 2, or let's call this part B. This will be 7A, and then we'll have 7B, the second part of our dealing with the wonderful Sergeant Peltz.